Damien's POV. The War Council had just broken for a midday recess when my phone buzzed on the table beside me. A familiar number. I answered with a clipped, "This is Damien." The voice on the other end was hoarse, frantic. "Gamma Tyson. Alpha. Rogue attack Blackstone Ridge. Full breach. We're being overrun." Time stopped. Across the room, Xavier's head snapped toward me. Bailey, already halfway to standing, stilled when she saw my face. "The twins," she whispered, barely audible. I didn't say a word. Just stood, my chair crashing backward. "They're with Mom and Dad," Xavier said, more to himself than to anyone else. Bailey was already moving. Xavier right behind her. Grant and Nessa on their heels. I grabbed the keys and barked for my best warriors to follow. We tore out of the compound like hellhounds had our scent. The ride to Blackstone Ridge was a blur of blood-pounding silence. Everyone jumped in various vehicles and started barreling out of northern bluffs. Bailey sat rigid in her seat. Her fists clenched tight, eyes burning gold. Penn scratched at the surface, snarling. Her wolf was furious, terrified, and begging to be let out. The air in the vehicle turned electric. "If they touch them, Xavier. If they hurt our babies," Penn hissed through the bond to us all. Xavier reached over, wrapping a hand around Bailey's thigh, grounding her. "We'll get to them in time," he said, but the cracks in his voice betrayed the doubt eating him alive. Grant sat with a permanent snarl etched on his face. Nessa gripped his hand tightly, her knuckles white. "I should have never left them," Bailey muttered. "They're with Caroline and Perry," Grant reminded gently. "There is no safer place." But Bailey didn't respond. She slammed her fist into the dashboard so hard the console cracked. Her breathing came in ragged bursts. Her wolf was barely restrained. "Don't hold me back," she whispered. "When we get there, don't you dare hold me back." We arrived to chaos. Smoke curled over the tree lines. The main gates were shattered. Screams pierced the air. Blood. Bodies. Rogues. Blackstone Ridge was under siege. Bailey didn't wait. She jumped out of the SUV mid-roll. By the time her feet hit the ground, she'd already shifted. Penn tore from her skin in a blur of fur and teeth. Xavier shifted seconds behind her. Asher leapt over the SUV, teeth bared and eyes wild. I shifted and took off after them. Grant and Nessa moved in tandem, protecting the flanks. War erupted. There had to be over 200 rogues, maybe more. This wasn't just a raid. This was annihilation. Caroline stood outside the west wing, singed and bloodied but alive, clutching Ariel while Perry shielded Malachi behind a car. Two warriors stood guard, both bleeding but defiant. The second Bailey saw the twins, her fury doubled. Penn was a beast unleashed. She lunged into the fray, snapping necks, tearing through flesh like paper. One rogue tried to lunge at her side. Penn caught him midair, sank her teeth into his throat, and tossed his body into a wall. Another rogue came from behind. She kicked backward, crushing his skull with her hind legs. She didn't stop, didn't blink. Her snarls sent chills down every spine in the battle. Asher followed in lockstep. They were a mated pair of death, tearing through enemy lines like they were born to do it. To my right, Nessa, graceful, fast, darted under a rogue and slashed his Achilles tendons before flipping him and driving her claws into his gut. Grant, in wolf form, charged through a trio of attackers, his massive frame bowling them over before locking jaws on one's spine and ripping it clean. But it was Bailey. Goddess, it was Bailey. A rogue lunged for Caroline. Penn intercepted, vaulted high, sank her claws into his face, and rode him to the ground like a beast from the underworld. Blood sprayed like a fountain. Penn stood atop the corpses of 7 rogues in 10 minutes. Covered in blood. Breathing hard. Eyes glowing. She was magnificent. Terrifying. The tide turned quickly. When the last rogue fell, the grounds were unrecognizable. Burnt grass. Broken bodies. Ash and blood smeared across stone walls. Xavier shifted back and ran to Caroline, taking both twins in his arms, holding them so tight they squealed. "They're safe," he whispered, collapsing to his knees. "They're okay. They're okay." Bailey shifted back and stumbled toward him, naked and soaked in blood, her body trembling. Xavier held her and the babies in his arms, whispering soothing things no one could hear. Caroline sobbed softly beside them. Perry stood, eyes scanning for more threats. I shifted and stood guard with Grant. Nessa helped guide warriors to the medic wing. We had survived, but it came at a price. Blackstone Ridge had been targeted. And it hadn't been random. This was a message. We heard it loud and clear. Grant's POV, the air still reeked of blood and ash when Marcus approached Damien with a grim face, his clothes torn and stained red from combat. The fires had been extinguished, the rogue corpses piled along the southern border, but the weight of what had happened lingered like fog. "Damage report?" Damien asked hoarsely, wiping soot from his brow. Marcus gave a nod. 4 security personnel wounded. 2 of ours. Deep cuts, but they'll heal. No casualties on our side. His voice dipped lower. But the rogue count over 200 dead. They came to slaughter Alpha. They didn't expect to lose. A long silence followed. We all looked at one another, absorbing the weight of that number. "This wasn't random," I said, the words heavy in my throat. "This was orchestrated. I saw a man before the attack. In a black hoodie. Just watching. Face hidden. He vanished before the first strike. This was planned down to the second." Damien cursed under his breath. "A coordinated rogue assault at 2 different packs in under a week?" He shook his head. "No one's seen anything like this in decades." I nodded. "We have to assume we're all being targeted. This has to be bigger than we initially thought." Xavier walked over, still shirtless from the fight, one twin cradled in each arm. His eyes flicked to me, and for once his usual guarded expression cracked. He looked exhausted. Bone-deep exhausted. Bailey walked beside him, her hand on his back, steadying him. Her face was unreadable, but her wolf pen still pulsed beneath her skin like a storm waiting to break. Damien looked at the 4 of us, Xavier, Bailey, Marcus, and me, then gestured toward the war room. "We need to revisit the strategy plans we formulated at the council before we left," he said. "This changes everything." But Bailey wasn't listening to strategy. Not yet. She turned to Caroline, who sat on the steps of the packhouse porch with Perry, both bloodied but upright. Ariel was tucked under Caroline's chin, fast asleep. Malachi was in Perry's arms, sucking his thumb without a care in the world. Bailey walked over and knelt before them, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You protected them. You kept them safe." Caroline smiled through bloodied lips. "I would do it again 1,000 times." Perry snorted. "You think we'd let anything happen to our grandbabies?" He adjusted the baby gently in his arms. "We'd lay down our lives for them, Bailey." No hesitation. Bailey looked between them, her throat bobbing as she swallowed the emotion threatening to overtake her. "I know," she whispered. "But thank you anyway." Xavier stepped beside her, laying his hand on Caroline's shoulder. "We're going back to Silver Ridge," he said quietly. "It's clear the attacks are focused on the mountain packs. We'll be better equipped there." Damien nodded. "You're right. We'll keep in contact daily. If there's even a whisper of movement, we'll alert you immediately." Xavier turned to me and Marcus. "Prepare the convoy. We move within the hour." I nodded, but my gaze lingered on the burned fields of Blackstone Ridge. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. We rolled back into Silver Ridge just after sunset, and it didn't feel like coming home. It felt like arriving at the front lines. The gates opened with a groan, the guards saluting crisply. Their uniforms were stained from the increased drills Kale had initiated while we were gone. Every face we passed was tight with tension. Eyes scanning. Back straight. Wolves on edge. There was no more peace here. Bailey hadn't said much since the attack at Blackstone Ridge. Neither had Xavier. I understood. Their entire world had nearly burned to ash, and if not for Perry and Caroline. Goddess, I don't even want to think about what could have happened. I watched Bailey press a kiss to each of the twins' foreheads before disappearing into the training compound with Kale. Xavier followed a minute later. I knew what that meant. They weren't going to wait for war to come knocking again. They were bringing it to the front door. Nessa was already in the beta office when I got there, flipping through the updated patrol schedules with that serious, no-nonsense look I'd come to love. "You beat me here," I said, dropping my bag by the wall. She looked up, her expression softening just a little. "Didn't sleep much." "Me either." I paused. "You okay?" She nodded, but it didn't reach her eyes. I walked around the desk and pulled her to me. "No words. just silence and breathing, and the quiet beat of our bond reminding us we were in this together. After a moment, she pulled away and handed me a report. 3 packs, Red Mesa, Pine Hollow, and Iron Creek, have confirmed minor skirmishes at their borders. Not full-scale attacks, but they're testing defenses. I scanned the details. All the signs were there, probing patterns, synchronized hits, near-identical escape tactics. Same strategy, I murmured. Same training. This isn't rogue chaos anymore. This is military. Nessa nodded. We've got 522 warriors currently undergoing advanced drills. Kale says they're progressing faster than expected. She's also integrating Bailey's female defense unit into the main rotation. I smirked. The Omega Task Force? She rolled her eyes but smiled. Don't call it that. They'll probably adopt it. I felt pride rising in my chest. Bailey had taken an entire demographic overlooked by most packs and weaponized them in under 2 weeks. That's what leadership looked like. That report from the interrogation? I asked, flipping to the second file on her desk. Right here. She handed it to me. Bailey's rogue said there's a larger force in the Northern Ridge Territory. At least 3 separate cells operating under one command. I scanned the name scribbled at the bottom. The Revenant Alpha? I frowned. That sounds like a ghost story. Apparently, he's the one uniting all these rogue groups, she said. The rogues revere him like a god. No one's seen his face. Some think he's a former alpha who lost his pack to council politics and went underground. I exhaled slowly. This just keeps getting worse. By nightfall, the Alpha house was lit up like a fortress. War plans were scattered across the map room table. Patrol routes, guard rotations, communication sigils. Nessa and I sat side by side, Xavier across from us, Bailey standing by the map with Kale, pointing out potential weak zones. Any word from Lawrence? Xavier asked. Nessa nodded. He's strengthening Northern Bluffs wards and setting up mirrored protocols. Marcus and Damien will remain for the week while they recover. Bailey turned from the map. And what about us? Xavier arched a brow. Silver Ridge holds the line. We protect our own. But we also prepare our offensive. Nessa looked over at me and I nodded. We start training at dawn. Everyone. No one gets a pass. Bailey crossed her arms. Then I'll lead the drills. Penn's been itching for something to kill. Kale looked pleased. I'll send the medic staff a warning. The room chuckled softly, but the air was still heavy. Later, back in our room, Nessa collapsed onto the bed, still fully dressed. Didn't think coming back would feel heavier than leaving, she said into the pillow. I lay beside her, brushing hair from her face. We're doing everything we can. That's all we can do. I know. She looked up at me. But this feels bigger than anything we've faced. It feels like the beginning of something. I pressed my lips to her temple. Then we face it together. She reached up, resting her palm on my cheek. Promise? Always. The world outside was turning darker. But inside, as long as she was beside me, I had my light. The wind rolled in heavy with tension, carrying the scent of distant blood and the warning of conflict. We were in the northern watchtower when Kale mind-linked us. An unknown male had approached the border. Xavier, Kale, and I were on the move instantly. The warriors stationed at the northern perimeter had already formed a barrier just inside the Silver Ridge border. The rogue Alpha stood just beyond it, tall, broad-shouldered, and cloaked in a tattered black hoodie. His scent was foreign and corrupted, tainted with death and something darker. He made sure to stand just outside our jurisdiction, just out of reach. But even from this distance, I could feel the raw threat radiating from him. Who the hell is that? I asked Kale, my voice low. Kale's eyes narrowed. I think that's him. The one the rogues called the Revenant Alpha. Xavier stepped forward, his presence cold and commanding. What are you doing here? He called out, voice steady and dangerous. What do you want? The rogue lifted his hood slowly, revealing a rugged, cruel face with cold eyes that glimmered silver. His face was scarred, one jagged line cutting across his temple. He looked more beast than man, like someone who had seen war and brought it with him. My name is Garen, the rogue said, voice guttural and void of warmth. Alpha of what remains of the Red Claw Pack. And I've come for what was stolen from me. Bailey and Nessa broke through the line of warriors, walking side by side until they stood beside Xavier and me. Bailey's eyes were hard, shoulders squared, her aura brimming with fury. "I'm the Luna," Bailey said. "And I don't know who the hell you are. So how could I have taken anything from you?" Garen smirked, the gesture devoid of humor. "You took Red Claw Pack's hunter and teacher. They were ours. And you stole them." Bailey's breath hitched, but she didn't flinch. My jaw clenched. Nessa's hand found mine. Xavier growled. "You brought a war to our territory for a teacher and a hunter?" "Yes," Garen said without hesitation. "They were assets to our pack. You took them without permission. You undermined my rule." I stepped forward, unable to hide my disgust. "You expect an elderly man to keep hunting for your pack? That's cruel. You call yourself a leader?" Garen chuckled, low and empty. "How I run my pack is none of your business," he said. "But if you must know, my wolves obey me because they fear me. That's more than I can say for your soft, spoiled mutts." Bailey said to Penn, "This bastard really thinks he owns my parents like livestock." Penn snarled from within. "Let me out, Bailey. Just once. I'll rip his tongue out and make him watch." "Soon," Bailey whispered in her mind. "We're going to make him wish he'd stayed in his hole." Garen's cold gaze never wavered. "You have 24 hours to return what is rightfully mine. Or I unleash everything I've gathered from Georgia to Oregon. Every rogue. Every killer. Every beast. All of them." Asher growled from within Xavier, the air thick with impending violence. The warriors bristled, ready to lunge at the smallest sign. Xavier bared his teeth. "You're mistaken if you think you can tell me what to do." Bailey touched Xavier's arm gently, then spoke through the mind link. "Please, don't give them my parents. They're not going back to that monster." Xavier's voice in the link was sharp with conviction. "Bailey, they're my family now. I don't give away my family. Especially not to this piece of shit." Then, without the mind link, Bailey stepped forward. Her voice was loud, but the emotion behind it was razor sharp. "My alpha," she began, eyes locked on Xavier. "Please give me this. I owe him for the trouble he's caused, for the way he treated my parents, and for putting our babies at risk." Xavier stared at her, something dark and proud flashing across his face. He stepped closer and kissed her forehead. "Whatever you want, my Luna." He turned back to Garen. "You want to make demands? Good luck. You just made the mistake of pissing off my mate." Bailey stepped past the barrier, eyes burning gold, teeth bared in a grin that promised violence. "Do your worst," Xavier added. "But just know she's about to do hers." Garen laughed quietly, a twisted, mocking sound that slithered through the air. "Let's see how long your Luna can keep her fire once I start burning everything you love." Bailey cracked her neck and rolled her shoulders, her power rising like a tide. "He talks too much," Penn growled. "Let's take his tongue as a souvenir." The rogue turned and vanished into the woods without another word. Garen. He had no idea who he'd just challenged. Penn's POV he turned to leave. That was his last mistake. Before Garen could take another step, I surfaced with a growl that split the air like thunder. Bones cracked, muscles tore, Bailey let me loose, and I didn't hesitate. I exploded forward in a blur of fangs and rage. Garen barely had time to turn before I was on him. My jaws clamped down on his throat with the full force of retribution. I lifted him effortlessly and slammed him into the ground with bone-shattering violence. His scream was short-lived. I tore into him, fur and flesh and bone flying with each strike. My claws raked across his chest, splitting him open from collarbone to pelvis. I shredded his limbs like paper, tearing sinew and muscle with precise brutality. His blood sprayed across the tree line, dark and steaming. It soaked the soil, the air, and my paws. One eye bulged from its socket as I crushed his skull underfoot. One moment he was a threat. The next he was meat. The rogue army stood frozen in shock, mouths open, eyes wide. Their alpha had been dismantled, obliterated before their very eyes. None of them had moved. None of them even twitched. Kale gave a sharp whistle. From behind the rogues, Silver Ridge warriors emerged, silent shadows from the trees, forming a crescent wall. They moved like ghosts, their blades glinting, eyes burning with a lust for vengeance. The slaughter began. Rogues scattered in all directions, but there was nowhere to run. Our warriors were merciless. Blades carved through flesh. Jaws snapped through tendons. Screams rose high and fell quickly beneath the storm of carnage. Kale's sword moved like lightning, decapitating 2 rogues in one sweep. Nessa fought beside her, precise and deadly, her blade dripping crimson. Grant, already mid-shift, barreled into 3 rogues and crushed them beneath his paws. One rogue tried to leap onto his back. Grant threw him 10 feet into a tree, snapping every bone in the rogue's body with the impact. Xavier, with Asher full and furious, ripped the spine out of a rogue mid-leap and used it to stab another through the throat. He twisted the bloody vertebrae, smiling darkly as the rogue gurgled and fell. The field was chaos, blood painting the grass, limbs scattering like leaves. One rogue tried to beg. A Silver Ridge warrior cut his tongue out before finishing the job with a dagger to the base of the skull. This wasn't a fight. It was an execution. Another rogue attempted to crawl away, both legs shattered. Nessa approached silently and slid her blade between his ribs. He coughed blood and whispered, "Mercy." She leaned close. "You brought none. You receive none." Every move we made was fueled by fury, Bailey's fury, mine, Xavier's, Grant's, all of us. This wasn't about protecting territory anymore. This was a message. You come for our family? You don't leave breathing. By the time the final body fell, the air was thick. The forest floor was slick with blood. Not a single rogue had escaped. Not one. Kale surveyed the destruction, nodding in grim approval. "No survivors," she confirmed. I shifted back, Bailey returning to the forefront, panting hard, blood streaking her face and chest. Her eyes were still glowing, her skin still vibrating with the remnants of Penn's wrath. Xavier approached her, eyes wide with awe. "That was necessary," Bailey said, voice hoarse. "He made it personal." Grant looked over the field of broken corpses. "Garen thought he could break us. Instead, we broke the legacy of Red Claw itself. We stood amid the wreckage, victorious. Our wolves were silent, spent but proud. The earth trembled with what had been done here. Ending in blood. We made damn sure of it." Grant's POV: the kitchen was quiet, too quiet for a pack house, but I welcomed it. After the chaos, the silence felt like a balm. The sun cast a soft golden hue through the windows, illuminating the steam rising from the mugs of tea sitting before us. Monique sat across from me, her hands gently cradling her cup, eyes rimmed red but filled with warmth. Calvin sat beside her, calm and stoic as always, though I caught the occasional flicker of worry in his eyes. Beside me, Nessa sat with one hand resting lightly on my thigh, a subtle sign of our unity. "I know this isn't easy to hear," I began carefully, "but Garen came here to take you both back to Red Claw. Back to Georgia." Monique's shoulders tensed. For a long moment she didn't say a word. Her fingers tightened around her mug. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, finally looking up. "We never meant to bring danger to Silver Ridge. We thought." Her voice broke. "We thought we could finally be at peace." Nessa leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "You are family. Here, family is sacred. Protected. Always." She smiled, then smirked a little as she sat back. "Besides, you should have seen what Penn did to that bastard." Calvin raised an eyebrow. Monique blinked, startled by the sudden shift in tone. Nessa chuckled, her eyes gleaming with pride. "She didn't just kill him. She shredded him. Ripped him into so many pieces the rogues didn't even have time to react. It was like a damn horror movie, but glorious." Grant nodded. "Everything Nessa's saying? Truth. Garen thought he could walk into our home and threaten our people. He died for that mistake." Nessa turned back to the Monroes, her expression softening. "You're safe now. And this? This is your home." I smiled at them both. "Your only job now is to enjoy your grandchildren and spoil them rotten. We'll handle the rest." Monique covered her mouth as a tear slid down her cheek. Calvin placed a hand on her back and gave us both a grateful nod. "Thank you," Monique whispered. "For everything. For protecting us. For loving our daughter like she deserves." Nessa reached out and squeezed her hand. "Always." Monique set her mug down and reached out, clasping Nessa's hand tightly. "You don't know what it means to us. To be seen, truly seen. For so long we hid. We silenced who we were, out of fear, out of duty. We buried our pain to survive." Calvin finally spoke, his deep voice low but steady. "When Malcolm forced our daughter away, we thought we'd never see her again. Every day that passed, we prayed she'd find freedom. But I never imagined she'd find this a true home, love and protection. Nessa leaned closer, her voice thick with emotion. Bailey gave that to us all. She's fierce, but she's also full of light. And you gave her that light. Monique wiped her eyes, smiling through the tears. She's everything we hoped she'd become and more. I cleared my throat, my voice a bit rough. She saved us too. She made us stronger. We'll protect her and both of you with our lives. That's what we do for family. This pack is your family. There was a long, comfortable silence. Then Nessa stood and gently pulled Monique into a hug. Let us carry the weight now. You've done more than enough. Monique clung to her like a mother clinging to hope. Xavier's POV. The morning sun cast a golden light over the Silver Ridge grounds, bathing the trees in a honeyed glow. Bailey walked beside me, her fingers lightly brushing mine as we strolled past the training field. The air was still, save for the occasional sound of birdsong and the distant murmur of pack members starting their day. We passed a group of young pups being led by 2 teachers. They were all holding hands in a single line, waddling along in matching boots and colorful jackets. It was the kind of scene I never thought I'd appreciate, but something about the innocence of it, the simplicity, softened something in my chest. Suddenly, a little girl at the end of the line broke away and ran toward Bailey with arms wide. "Luna Bailey," she squealed. Before I could react, the tiny thing latched onto Bailey's leg with surprising strength. I blinked, instinctively tensing, then promptly found myself irrationally annoyed that some small child was holding onto my mate. Bailey, of course, knelt down with a radiant smile, scooping the pup into her arms and giving her a big kiss on the cheek. "Aren't you supposed to be walking in line, little warrior?" The little girl giggled, wrapped her arms around Bailey's neck, and whispered something only Bailey could hear. Bailey laughed. "Well, I think you're the bravest of the whole class. Now go back before your teacher thinks I've stolen you." The girl beamed and ran back, the other pups giggling and pointing. The teachers bowed slightly to us as they passed. "Luna. Alpha," one said with a warm smile. I nodded, but my eyes were on Bailey. She was still watching the children with that soft expression, the one that made my heart clench. "I love you so damn much," I said without thinking. She turned toward me, eyes full of warmth. "I know." We moved closer, arms slipping around each other. As I held her, I buried my face into the crook of her neck, inhaling her scent, wildflowers and heat. And just then I felt her stir. Not physically, but inside. Pen's voice in her head purred. Pen said with obvious amusement. "Tell him I want to ride his face until he forgets his own name." Bailey choked on a laugh, pulling back slightly to look at me. "What?" I asked. "She says she wants to ride your face until you forget your own name," Bailey said sweetly. I grinned and pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Pen shouldn't worry. I plan on letting her do exactly that." I paused, brushing a strand of hair behind Bailey's ear. "But I'll have to be careful," I said softly. "Since you're pregnant again." Bailey froze. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "Wait, what?" I nodded, smiling wider. "I caught the scent this morning. Subtle, but it's there." Her eyes went wide, her hands flying to her stomach. "Xavier." I leaned in, kissing her gently. "You gave me a family," I whispered. "And I will spend every day of my life protecting it. Protecting you." She stood there, stunned and glowing. Bailey stood in front of me, blinking back tears she didn't even realize had gathered. Her fingers trembled where they rested over her belly, and for the first time in a long time, I saw her truly speechless. The twins are only 6 months old," she finally whispered. I nodded, brushing her cheek with the back of my fingers. "I know. But apparently, the moon goddess had other plans." A soft, stunned laugh escaped her. "Do you think she's trying to kill me? Another baby already?" "She's honoring you," I said firmly. "You're a warrior. A protector. A Luna unlike any other." Pen stirred in the background of our bond, more tender than usual. "I knew it. I told you we were fertile as hell," she murmured proudly. "Guess we need to sharpen the spears for round 3, Alpha." Bailey shook her head with a chuckle, then stepped into my arms again. This time it wasn't just affection, it was surrender. The kind of surrender only trust could create. She pressed her face into my chest, her voice muffled. I was just starting to feel like myself again. But now it's like the future just showed up early. And instead of being terrified, I feel full. I tighten my hold on her. We've faced worse. This, I said as I placed a hand on her lower abdomen. This is a gift. One we'll welcome with open arms, just like the twins. She looked up at me, teary-eyed but smiling. We'll need more help. More hands. We'll build a village if we have to, I said, kissing her temple. We'll make sure you have everything and everyone you need. We stood there in silence, the crisp wind brushing through the trees as the pups in the distance resumed their little march. I want to tell the others, she whispered. I nodded. But later. Tonight. After dinner. Let's keep it our secret a little longer. Bailey exhaled a soft laugh and kissed my lips. Then I guess we better start planning. Planning what? I asked. She grinned. Another nursery. And maybe a nap. I laughed, holding her close. My heart swelled in a way I never thought possible. The world was still dangerous. Rogues still lurked. But here, in this moment with her, I felt untouchable. Unshakable. Bailey was my beginning. Our children were our legacy. And whatever war loomed ahead, I'd burn down the world to keep this safe. Dinner that evening was held in the grand dining hall. The long table was filled with laughter, the soft clinking of silverware, and the scent of roasted meats and freshly baked bread. Pack members sat shoulder to shoulder, swapping stories and teasing one another. Bailey sat beside me, glowing, her hand resting lightly on her stomach. We hadn't told anyone yet, but I could see the flickers of curiosity in Grant's eyes, the way Nessa kept stealing glances Bailey's way like she knew something was coming. Halfway through the meal, I cleared my throat and stood. The room fell silent. I have an announcement, I said, my voice calm but sure. Bailey rose beside me, linking her fingers with mine. We are thrilled to share that Luna Bailey is pregnant. A stunned hush washed over the room. Then an explosion of cheers. Grant rose to his feet and let out a whistle. Well, damn, Alpha. You don't waste time. Nessa covered her mouth, laughing, her eyes sparkling. Congratulations, Luna. Another little one? Bailey beamed. Yes. It was a surprise, but a very welcome one. Monique and Calvin, seated at the far end of the table, wiped away joyful tears. Grant leaned toward Nessa with a smirk. They're going to need a new wing just for the cribs. And here I thought we were going to finally get some rest, Nessa teased. Bailey laughed. No such thing in this house. We sat back down, the room now buzzing with excitement and warmth. And as I looked around at my pack, my Luna, our growing family, I knew this was more than a moment. It was the beginning of everything we'd fought for. Nessa's POV preparations for the new baby began almost immediately after the dinner announcement. By morning, the pack house had transformed into a hub of joyful chaos. Bailey and I stood in what had once been an empty guest room, now deemed the future nursery. Sunlight spilled across the floorboards as we imagined where the crib would go, which wall should have the mural, and whether the changing table should be closer to the window or the closet. Bailey's face was bright with excitement. I was thinking, bears. Like little forest bears for the nursery theme. I tilted my head thoughtfully. That's adorable. Or wolves. You are raising future alphas after all. She smirked. Fair point. Maybe both. Bears and wolves, chaotic but cute. Just like our babies. Xavier peeked into the room with a clipboard in hand and an overly serious look on his face. I come bearing swatches. Oh goddess, Bailey muttered. Is he nesting now? I'm managing expectations and supervising the aesthetic, he corrected, completely unbothered. This is a legacy space. I giggled behind my hand. You sound like a home improvement show host. Xavier shot me a wink. Coming soon to Luna Network. Later that afternoon, Grant and I joined them in the garden. The air was sweet with lavender and honeysuckle, and Bailey reclined under a shaded canopy with a sketchpad in hand, planning out baby room layouts while Xavier rubbed her feet with impressive focus. I leaned into Grant's side as he wrapped an arm around me. They're going to need help wrangling 3 kids, I murmured. Oh, I'm already planning a schedule, Grant said. Monday through Wednesday, twins. Thursday through Friday, new baby. Weekends? Grandparents' duty. Wouldn't it be funny if she had another set of twins? Monique and Calvin, wandered over with Ariel and Malachi in their arms, cooing and bouncing the giggling twins. "We're just here for the cuddles," Monique grinned. "And we plan on spoiling this next one just as much." Bailey shook her head, smiling at the unfolding chaos. "We're going to need a bigger house. We're going to need a bigger pack," I added, laughing. As the sun began to set, we gathered around the long stone table outside, sharing food, stories, and gentle promises of support. The laughter was easy, the smiles real. For the first time in a long while, there were no shadows lurking, just joy. Grant leaned in and pressed a kiss to my temple. "Do you ever think about it?" he whispered. "About what?" "This," he said softly. "How we got here. From fear and war. To this." I looked around, the glowing faces, the warmth, the promise. I nodded. "Every day." Bailey raised her glass. "To the future." Xavier clinked his against hers. "To strength, love. And the little feet that will keep us all up at night." "To family," Grant added, holding his glass out. And we drank beneath the twilight sky, wrapped in the arms of everything we'd fought for. Grant's POV 4 years later. The sun stretched lazily across the Silver Ridge training grounds, casting golden rays over the dew-kissed grass. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the training field. I stood at the edge of the grounds, my arm loosely wrapped around Nessa's waist. She held our 1.5-year-old son on her hip, his wide brown eyes locked on the scene before us. He was mesmerized, jaw slack, fingers clenched around the collar of Nessa's shirt. Just a few yards ahead, Malachi and Ariel moved like seasoned warriors under Kale's guidance. Their movements were fluid, sharp, flawless, even at their young age. They struck, ducked, and countered in perfect synchronicity, their laughter echoing between bursts of focus. Xavier stood nearby, arms crossed over his chest, his expression equal parts awe and pride. "They're naturals," he murmured, not really to anyone. Just nodded approvingly as Kale barked sharp directions. "They're yours," I said, grinning. "They didn't have a choice." He chuckled, then turned his head slightly toward the pack house. Malachi's form was flawless for someone his age, each punch precise, each pivot quick. Ariel was just as deadly, her movements fluid, nearly feline. They moved in sync like they were born for this, because they were. "Center your weight, Ariel." "Again," Kale shouted. Ariel grunted, then moved faster. Her brother mirrored her, sweat already dampening their matching training shirts. I looked down at my own little cub, who had his hand in his mouth now, watching with wide gray eyes rimmed in gold. Nessa walked up beside me, brushing her fingers gently across the soft curls on his head. "He's going to want to be out there before he can run properly," she said, smiling, then kissed our son's temple, her gaze warm. "He's going to be strong, just like his dad." I wrapped an arm around her waist and pressed a kiss to her hair. "And kind, just like his mom." Meanwhile, at the Monroe's cottage on the other side of the pack, Bailey sat cross-legged on the living room floor. Toys surrounded her like a chaotic rainbow. Her daughter, a carbon copy of Xavier with wild black curls and fierce gray eyes, was currently smeared from chin to cheek in chocolate. "Did you even taste it?" Bailey laughed, gently dabbing at the sticky mess with a wet cloth. The little girl squealed and dodged, giggling uncontrollably. Monique leaned over from the sofa, chuckling. "She's just like you were. Wild and sweet at the same time." "I take offense to that," Bailey said with mock indignation. "I was a terror. This one's a sweetheart." Calvin entered the room just then, shaking his head with a smirk. "I saw her chase a squirrel yesterday with a stick like she was going to train it to fight. That's not sweet, that's a war general energy." Bailey snorted. "So, definitely mine then." Laughter filled the room. Back on the training field, the twins finished their drill and turned to see us watching. Ariel waved. Malachi gave a thumbs up. "Daddy, did we do good?" he called out to Xavier. "You were perfect," Xavier called back. "Both of you." I looked at Nessa and saw it, the shine in her eyes, the pride, the love. The moon hung high in the night sky as I stepped onto the back patio, cradling a warm bottle for our son. The house was quiet, save for the hum of night creatures and the faint lull of wind through the trees. Nessa sat on the swing bench, her robe loose, her eyes closed as she rocked gently. Our son stirred against my chest. "You always beat me to the quiet," I said softly. Nessa smiled, her eyes fluttering open. It's the only time the world feels still. I passed her the bottle and settled beside her. She took our son into her arms with ease, cooing softly as he latched and fed. I watched them, feeling a tug in my chest I couldn't explain. I leaned in, brushing a kiss to her temple. She leaned against me, our son dozing quietly in her arms. A few months after Garen's defeat, word spread fast through the region. Red Claw was leaderless. When an alpha and beta fall without naming successors, the old laws apply, inviting alphas and betas from surrounding packs to compete in a sanctioned trial known as the Right of Reclamation. It lasted 3 brutal days. Dozens of challenges. Fights that tested not only strength but wit, strategy, and endurance. In the end, Dante emerged victorious. He and his mate, Marlene, were crowned Alpha and Luna of Red Claw. Fitting, really. Marlene was the very friend who had risked everything to warn Bailey's mom and coordinate the escape that led to Mr. and Mrs. Monroe's freedom. The final challenge was nearly taken by another fierce contender, Abigail, a female beta with unmatched fire. Her defeat wasn't due to lack of skill, but a single misstep during the last match. Dante seized the moment, and she yielded. Instead of resentment, Abigail stood proudly at Dante's side when the mantle was passed to him. Her loyalty earned her the title of Red Claw's new female beta. With her ferocity and honor, she would make a formidable second. Under their leadership, Red Claw began to rebuild, not in the shadow of tyranny, but in the light of resilience, growth, and strength forged through fire. Back in Silver Ridge, we had peace. And we cherished it. Because what we fought for wasn't just survival. It was for peace like this. For the family we built from blood, bond, and love.